Are you live yet, Josh, on the phone?
Nope, it's just set up. I'm waiting until you guys are good to go. You don't have the mics hot.
Yep. Yep, I know.
Yeah, I know, you know. You guys are ready to rock and roll. You just gotta turn the mics on and go live. I'm gonna go live.
Click on GarageBand.
What?
The bottom right guitar. Click on it. Hit play. Or hit record, the red button. Just talking to your microphone.
Hello.
All right, we are live. All right, ready to go live? Go.
Arriba!
Okay. Are you live on the phone?
Phone's Gucci.
You're live over here?
Phone is Gucci.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Hers is going good, so let's just keep rolling. My computer does this sometimes.
Keep going, I'll fuck with it.
It's fine. My computer does this sometimes. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's another episode of Two Brothers TV. We have Mariah Christine as our special guest today. Today we're going to talk about self-love, and it's good to have a woman's perspective on the show. We haven't had one yet, and it's good to, especially on a topic of self-love, because I think we all do that differently, and especially women and men, we're probably going to have different perspective and experiences on how we practice self-love. And I think that I'm a man, so I definitely don't know what it's like to be in a woman's body, and women, I think, have a lot of pressure that men don't in today's society, so I think we can touch that. But, so yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today, and I would like to start off to say, welcome, Mariah, and how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing good.
How about you?
She sure bounced that back on me. So
Damn right.
I'll do most of the talking, which is usually how this relationship dynamic has gone.
Yeah. We'll see. We might change it up a little bit.
So I think, I think when we talk about anything on the show and in life, we like to share our experience and then also bring in certain principles that I think, big picture-wise, that people can relate to. I think when it comes to self-love, I definitely think that there's a difference between self-love and self-lust. So I want to be clear that we can talk about the difference in those two, because it's totally different than being someone who's just lustful and obsessed with themselves and making everything about them. And versus self-love, to me, is having compassion, empathy, and not judging yourself, being able to accept who you are, and being able to see that you're not perfect, but that you're also human, and that that you are who you are. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, like, how does someone practice self-love, right? So this is awareness. Like, this is one of the things that we talk about all the time, is like awareness. Like, if I'm not aware of who I am, how am I supposed to even know how to love myself?
Absolutely.
So, you know what I mean? So I think the first thing for me is it starts with not judging myself.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean I'm not taking an inventory or being honest, but it's not judging, and it's also allowing myself to not compare myself to others, and then also allow myself to just be me, not be afraid to be me, not be afraid to express myself, not be afraid to follow my heart and do what I love, and then also not, this is boundaries, not to say yes to everyone. Don't be like a yes person to please everyone, but don't also be someone who just like says no all the time and isolates and never takes opportunities to grow. So I think that's the things that just popped in my head that I can touch on from my experience on self-love.
What is? Give a backstory on Mariah so we know who she is.
Yeah, we will. So I'd like you to talk about a few things in here, and then I would like you to talk a little bit of backstory about yourself.
Yeah.
And who you are, and like just whatever you feel comfortable talking about yourself. Like I know who you are, but like people out there, to some extent, But like,
Oh, yeah.
if you could just touch on like some key points that, from your experience, what you think of self-love means, and then kind of talk about your story and how you practice that in your life.
Yeah, so the reason why I wanted to kind of talk about this is like, you know, growing up, like I never knew what self-love was, like it never really was taught to me. I mean, how can you teach such an intangible topic? I'm from Fargo. I moved up here to Duluth area a year ago. Fargo! To pursue my master's in social work, and I want to be a therapist. I also am a women's house manager at a sober house. And so, yeah, I want to be a therapist myself. And a lot of what I see in the world today is the lack of self love. Like, just the consumerism of today's society, where, I mean, society feeds off of our character defects and our inadequacies, and we always try to overcompensate for that. So I never really knew what self-love was. I mean, I endured like physical abuse from a biological father and that was my conception of love in general. And it's like, oh yeah, this is what love is, right? And my mom, who's like, I love her to death, but she's codependent and just kind of that pleasing others. So that nurture growing up is just being like naturally codependent, and I never really realized what that was until I started being sober and living a life of recovery. And like this past month, I've kind of been reflecting on just this past year, ever since moving to Duluth. And like I've been really just working on self-love and how can I practice self-love in myself. And it's a continuous process. I mean, especially as a woman, like seeing a bunch of ads like, hey, put on this makeup, this will make you look more pretty, or take this pill, and it will make you more attractive, and just kind of not looking at it from a societal lens and just kind of looking at inside myself. Practicing mantras, like doing the self-talk, positive self-talk, because negative talk, I mean, Isaac, you're kind of talking about not judging myself, but how can I not judge myself in a society that always judges? So that's kind of a question that I, ask myself, how can I move towards that and stay off the beaten path and create a new path in my life? So, yeah, I mean, so really, like, this past month, I had, like, a spiritual experience, and just, like, man, like, I beat myself up so damn much, and just, like, that negative self-talk, and just, like, how can I practice self-love today? And I've been doing that every day. Every night, like, before I go to bed, I, like, say, like, you are enough. I am enough. I am beautiful. I am worthy. I am all these things, because I mean, every one of us are, and I think we forget that today in such a fast-paced world. So, yeah.
No, I think that's a great point. I think giving yourself positive feedback and telling yourself that you are enough and that you are beautiful. I think that's super cool, and I think that especially with, when it comes to probably being a woman in society, that there's certain pressures that you guys have that men don't. That women aren't enough, or they're not beautiful, and how the marketing and projecting on that to women a lot can be difficult. I like how you touched on some of your past with parenting and how you had some experiences with that, because I think for me, like right, if our parents loved us a certain way or didn't love us a certain way, we a lot of times have learned behavior from our parents. So it's tough. Like for me, from my experience, like not having necessarily the perfect home either. Like it's like, how do you learn that then, right?
Right.
So it can be more difficult to learn that behavior versus if it's cultivated at a young age. So I think it's really important to talk about that, because I think a lot of people, as kids, their parents didn't teach them this. Their parents didn't teach them self-love. They didn't teach them about positive affirmations. They didn't teach them about compassion, empathy, and not judging yourself and following your heart. And I think that it's really difficult, like you said, in a world that's focused on, competition and perfectionism and consumerism, that's really hard for us not to do that, to not judge ourselves. But I think it's what we need to do. That's why the brand More Love Nation is like, I want. I got Mariah to wear one of them, but it's about not trying to judge myself. You know what I mean? It's not easy to do. Like what we're talking about is not easy to do. It takes strength and courage to do this.
Absolutely.
And I think it requires removing the ego, right? Because my ego is perfectionism, right? I want to be perfect, right? It means I'm either better than or less than, not equal. You know what I mean? So I think for me, that's what it is. So you mentioned you do positive affirmations at night. You're talking about some of your past stories. How have you used some of that pain in your past to learn from that? And then what other things are you doing that you mentioned on your list here, that you have some stuff written down, that how you practice self-love today?
Yeah, so I mean, this is not an overnight thing by any means, and really, like, the first 4 years of my recovery, like, I'm sober, and, like, just trying to do this thing, just try to be a productive member of society, and really, it just comes from within, and, like, the more I'm right with myself, the more I'm right with any other relationship. I feel like self-love and loving yourself sets the tone for every relationship in your life. Absolutely, and just really just trying to think outside of the box, like trying to not be on social media as much, trying not to like click on those ads, trying not to often I would, when I was trying to fill a void, I'd shop, like, to satisfy that need, right? Like, oh, this will make me look better or whatever. And I may not be consciously thinking that, but I'm subconsciously thinking that. So really just knowing myself and being self-awareness is first key, I think. And then also having a spiritual connection with a creator, higher power, whatever that may be. And as spiritual experience doesn't necessarily, I don't think, have to be a god. Like, it doesn't have to be so I mean, you can conceptualize it as whatever you want it to be, but I mean, so that's what I do, and that's what works for me. I've been trying to have a lot of self-care, like doing self-care. I think self-love and self-care is different. I think self-care is a tool to be used to create that self-love. So, I've been taught, like, as a social worker, like, what are ways to do some self-care and stuff like that, and it's like, to prevent burnout, and I mean, and you can apply this to any aspect in your life, with work or, relationships or whatever, and just kind of, finding your thing you do. Like, I try to get out in nature every weekend. I've been starting yoga. And I don't really know anything about yoga, but I'm doing it, and it's helps with that mindfulness. So doing those things, and kind of just getting out of your comfort zone, like this, for example, is out of my comfort zone, but I'm doing it. So kind of doing stuff even if you're not comfortable doing it. And really, I was comfortable hating myself, right? And, like, now I can say that I love myself, and that's, like, totally, like, out of this world, and just the peace and the serenity that I experience with that is really otherworldly. And, I mean, it's not brought up in, like, education. Like, I mean, how do you learn this, right? Like, I mean...
Yeah, I agree with everything that you're saying. I think
it falls on the parent.
I think I like a couple things that you touched on. So I think that I like how you said self-care versus self-love, and then self-care are the tools that some practical tools that we can use to apply that to, like, that's how we do self-love. And then I think when it comes to awareness, is being aware of how, like you're saying, how sometimes we as humans, and especially in America, right, like, we're guilty of material things, using that to fill our void, as part of our way to love ourselves, and how that that's not a healthy way to self-love. Like, so there's healthy and unhealthy ways, and you're describing very healthy ways to do that, and then there are unhealthy ways like consumerism. Not that people shouldn't have nice things or buy things, but it comes to the extreme where we're now replacing all these healthy things that you're describing with these unhealthy things as our solution to self-love, and it's not really a sustainable solution. It doesn't really help. It doesn't really provide us a balance and a passion and a purpose and emotional stability. And not only that, we can't give that away. Like the stuff that you're talking about, when I practice those things, I'm able to then help others and share how I do that if they want to find love. And then that makes people around us healthier and have better relationships, and it brings people up and brings people together. And I think that's super cool because not only do we need to practice these things, but then I need to be able to give them away to keep it. To, like, if I'm just doing all this stuff, but I'm not actually, the final part of this for me is then giving that love away freely, right? Like, I can't do all this stuff and then not give it away. Like, the More Love Nation brand that I started is like, it's about giving this love away. And I think the more that we can talk about it and share what we do to overcome our pain and our struggles and how we use these healthy things to love ourselves and practice self-care, then we can then have other people realize that they can do this and that it doesn't need to be like a nice car or, you know, a nice Gucci purse or that nice watch or whatever it is that we think we need to buy to fill us up inside. Like, that's not really a good solution. Like meditation, prayer, yoga, volunteer work, exercise, nutrition, you know, that's all practicing self-love to get ourselves in a healthy place. Because then I believe this is part of like the auditing process and inventory that my brother and I talk about, awareness, is then I can find my purpose, right? Because if I don't do these things, no matter what I do, it's never really going to be the best me. That's my experience. So like, what's your experience on like what you notice when you're doing these things versus when you're not doing things? Like, well, how your life changes. Like, how does your life change when you do this versus not?
So unhealthy, I'll first start with that. Unhealthy things that I've done is just, you know, continuously shop and like impulsively buy things. Try to find another person to fill my needs, or, you know, being with a man and like not even loving myself and like to try to fill that void. Like, oh, you love me, right? Like, and really, I mean, a lot of it is like partners and relationships today with that, and how I've moved, you know, and obviously like I'm in recovery too, so I use that with substances, and not just with substances, but anything in excess, I've used to fill a void. And I think first realizing that I do have a void and that those things are unhealthy are first key to realize like what I'm doing, stop myself in my tracks, and really reflect on what I'm doing and is it making me happy, and then kind of finding and self-exploring, you know, doing some reading, podcasts. You know, I enjoy like when you guys talk about love, that's super cool, and More Love Nation, and that's awesome, and the movement you guys are starting, I support that totally. But yeah, just really exploring myself and really just feeling it out. I mean, everybody's gonna have something different that helps them, make them feel whole. I mean, exercise has been one. I've been exercising, like doing CrossFit, like 3 or 4 times a week, and that's been like, wow.
That's probably been fun, huh? How's that treating your body?
Oh man, it's horrible. Like, I'm at the end, I feel like I'm dying, but I'm like, man, when can I go back? Because I know, well, I'm an addict, so, you know, of course I'm gonna love that shit, but I know, like, it's gonna make me feel better, and it's gonna make my body more in shape. Like, and I'm going to be able to maximize in everything I do. Like, I'll be able to run and, like, not worry about, like, feeling like you're going to, you know, just topple on over, like, stuff like that. Like, I've realized that a diet is not just what you eat, it's what you do, the people you hang out with.
Everything you consume.
Everything you consume. And that includes social media and all like the people you follow on there, and just like people just objectifying negativity and all that stuff. So yeah, it's like, oh, it's fun to read, but like, is that really good for your soul? I mean, at the end of the day, is it good for your soul? Like, I try to post positive things, even if I'm feeling negative, because then when I think negatively about myself, then I'm more apt to show that. But if I think negatively and I project something saying like I am enough, or something like a post I saw, like if we could spread love as quickly as we spread
hate,
negativity in the world, like the world would be a better place.
Yep.
And just even when
I'm
feeling that, even when I'm feeling that hate, like just in politics and mainstream society and government and all that, if I separate myself and be like, just post something and do an outright action. So really what I'm saying is like taking action and not just sitting and stewing in your negativity. So
yeah, I agree. You got some good. I think the one thing, you hit some really good points, and I think the one thing to touch on just in general, you talked about a lot of that stuff that you're talking about is about practicing honesty and inventorying, having an honest inventory and conversation with and a dialogue with yourself, right? Like that's the first step. Like we can't do that unless we are willing to slow down. Like I never can change in my life with anything unless I have that honest inventory. I'm like, okay, Isaac, damn, you're spending money on this stuff or whatever it is unhealthy because it's being driven by this emotion. That's not healthy. So that's like an honest inventory of looking at my actions and how I'm spending them. And then 2, you touched on you mentioned CrossFit and how it's like uncomfortable. Like it's uncomfortable to do these things because it requires growth. So like growth is uncomfortable, right?
Totally.
It totally is uncomfortable. But when we start to do these things, that uncomfortability for me becomes worth it because the result of it is so powerful. The emotional stability, that's the key out of this for me that I get is when you talked about all that stuff, I get out of all that emotional stability and a purpose in my life. And that is worth more than anything that I could buy or try to fill inside of me, or even a human or a person do that. And that's pretty powerful. It's very empowerment. So what we're talking about is empowerment, doing these things. And then I think the last 2 parts that I thought of when you were talking was to thine own self be true. So it takes courage because now we know who we are. Now we know who we are, right? Now we know who we are because we're practicing honesty and we're growing the growth steps in taking action and being of service. Now it's like, even if I know all that, I have to take action to stay true to myself.
Yeah.
Right? It's like my brother says, follow your passion for a profit. That's what he's saying, and that's what we're saying is like, to thine own self be true. Are you going to wake up every day and not be true to yourself just to spend time for $1 of money? Are you going to buy things and go to a job or spend time with people that aren't really remaining true to yourself because it creates an image in your life that fits what your family or friends want? So, and then the last part, that's boundaries. To be able to do all that and say no to people and say yes to yourself is boundaries. That requires boundaries to know yourself and then be able to have the courage to put boundaries up and say, no, my time is valuable, my love and my happiness is valuable, and that's what I need to put first. But at the same time, I also believe, to sum this up on my end, like, I can't do all that, but if I don't give that away, I'm being selfish. So, like, it's really important to give that value away at the same time. So,
but how do we do that?
How do we give our value away? Well, that's what we're doing right now. Like, we're giving our value away on social media. Like, so you can give value in everything that you do every day. And this is an example that we do this at scale. But I challenge people not only here, but like not even on the clock or on the camera. Like every day, we can bring value in every conversation that in person we bump into throughout our day. Like that needs to happen, number 1. And then number 2 is to be able to use social media not as a negative, not to bring hate and division, but use it as a way to bring unity and love. Yeah. And that's what it should be. And that's what we're doing right now live on this is like, that's how we do that. And like, that's the whole point, and it starts, what we're doing is rooted in storytelling. So that's why I love art. I'm an artist, like whether it's clothes, music, film, podcasting, like art is about creating something and using that as a way to connect via storytelling, whether it's the written word or photo or clothes or video. It doesn't really matter. All those are
Yeah.
different ways to communicate art and storytelling. Like, that's how we give that away now and share with the world what we do. And as humans, I believe we're meant to do that. Like, that's how we practice giving that love away. So
Yeah.
that's the balance that I found, is doing all of that and then give that away. So I want to ask you, what do you do, like, to give that away? Like, what are some things? So one thing I know is really important with women is being healthy relationship with other women and doing this stuff, and
Yeah.
then being in groups. Like, what do you do as a woman to bring to pick other women up? Because you're talking about some of the stuff you've been
Yeah.
through, and then now you're talking about some of the stuff you do on an individual level.
Yeah.
So what would you suggest, and what is your experience in what you do to make sure that you're not only helping yourself, but then also that you're surrounding yourself and making sure that you're helping other women at the same time?
Yeah, so I think, kind of like going off of you, like, I think really just sharing my experience is the biggest part of that, and like, 'cause I know what it feels to feel less than, and I know what it feels to feel like out of place and that sort of thing. So just sharing that experience with women and my past experiences. Like this past weekend, I hung out with some Fargo women and from back home, and it was just amazing. Like, we just had super spiritual talks, and like, I think just talking about real life like stuff that we go through, and keeping it at a personal level and just sharing your experience on that, it really just, I mean, brings a lot of authenticity to the relationships that you have, and like complimenting women and being like, hey, you're beautiful, like, you know, and just complimenting and just being like, don't you realize how amazing you are, and like, you know, all of that stuff. But first I have to be right with myself, right? Like, I have to be okay with myself. And you know, I may not see what other people see in me, and so I kind of have to keep that in mind as well. So I practice that by really having genuine relationships with women, and I mean, I have friendships with guys too, but it's really not the same. It's not the same like as with women, like, because women just constantly inspire me. Like, it's amazing. Like, JR's laughing in the background. You want to share, bro?
I said, fuck them dudes, though.
Yeah. Yeah, feminism all the way. Anybody can
Well,
be a
just because
feminist.
women inspire doesn't mean you're a feminist. It's
Yeah.
not like,
Well, a guy
We're-
could be a feminist.
okay, well, we're not going to get into that right now. We're not going to get into feminism right now. That's going to be another episode.
Yeah.
But no, women inspire me too. I'm definitely inspired.
Yeah.
You're one of the women that inspire me.
Thank you. And it doesn't have to just be in my exterior looks, right? Like, it's like I'm looking like, I don't want to be someone that's just known for having a great ass. Like, I want to be someone where it's just like,
I wouldn't want to be known just for that either.
you know, like, you
I
have
agree.
a really cool soul, you know? Like, you have a really awesome soul. Like, I want to know more, and just genuinely ask open-ended questions about them, and just really trying to learn from others. So that's how I do that, and being of service. Asking just simply how a person is in their day, and if they're going through any struggles. And really, you know, being a women's house manager has been an awesome experience for me. Like, I'm surrounded
Shout out
by,
Great Lakes Sober Living.
Yeah, shout out Great Lakes Sober Living. But yeah, and the women who live in Great Lakes Sober Living, you
Shout
guys
out.
are awesome. But really, I think they have, because they've told me they see me as a role model. I'm like, what? But like, it's super cool. But they're role models too, absolutely, because they bring a different story, and they've been through so much. And I mean, we all have, and just like, everybody has a different love to share, because everybody has a different love within themselves, and just really sharing that. So I think, you know, what we need women to do is really not objectify other women and complain or, you know, criticize other women, and really just look at their beauty that just doesn't come from the outside. So that's what I'm working on. I'm continuously working on. I'm not a master in it by any means. I'm just the master of my own experience, really. So yeah. Anything to add?
No, I think I really like how you talked about the objectification of women, because I think that's a big issue with our society, and how that's used to basically sex is to sell, sex
Yeah.
Like that's what. So I think that's key because I think as a man, that's what when I'm auditing myself. That's basically a test to see where I'm at, like, because it's really difficult to not objectify women. Like, I don't try to do that, like, but I'm not gonna lie that I have those thoughts. Like, I'm a guy.
We're all human.
So the key for me as a man is to accept the fact that I'm going to have those thoughts, but not act on them, not speak on them always. Right? Let's let the thought go. And eventually I get to a really good place spiritually where I might not even have any objectifying thoughts when I see a woman or I'm hanging out with a woman, but it can be on the other end too where that's all I'm thinking about. So for me, like, that goes back to my own inventory of where I'm at spiritually fit, and then also as a man, my job is to be able to get better at that. Like, okay, Isaac, like, dude, like, women are more than their body parts. Like, women have, like you said, they have personality, they have soul, just like I do. And, like, am I here to connect to that part of the person, or am I there to not? And I think for me, like, that's super, super important for me as a man to know. And I think that communication dialogue, I think, is what can bridge gaps between relationships with men and women, or wherever your partner is, same sex or not, opposite sex, whatever your partner, the person that you're attracted to, I think that can be applied to whoever you're sexually attracted to. And, for me, I think as a man, right, like, we have different things. So men, I feel like, want to be protectors and providers. We want to be financially stable. We want to be providers. We want to be protectors. We want to come off as a man who's stable emotionally, that, we don't want to come off as weak or sensitive. Like, so I think as a man, it's like the opposite end of trying to not be so emotionless, to actually find the balance in between that, where I'm also finding my purpose as a man and being able to be a provider and protector, and to not judge myself as a man if I'm not necessarily doing that the best where I think I can. So for me, from my experience when it comes to self-love as a man, it's like that's a big judgment, right? That's a big issue. Like, when I'm thinking about myself, like, oh man, I'm fucking not financially where I want to be, right? That's like a big issue, because, like, as men, I feel like we want to be providers for whoever that is. And I think that's a good thing for me to be aware of. And then kind of bringing this to a bigger issue, I think this is important to bring up. So there's things called the 5 love languages. Yeah. And I think it's really important, because if you know this, then it's going to be able to allow yourself in a relationship to be better. But then also, you should practice these 5 things if you're single by yourself.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, in your own life. So then that way, in any relationship, not even just an intimate, with family and friends, Christmas, birthdays, you can communicate to people, like, what your love languages are and what you do to treat yourself for self-care and self-love. That's going to allow you to be able to effectively communicate that to someone else. So,
say hi to Amber and Samantha in your comments. They said something in the comments. You're looking at it.
Hi,
we got
Amber
some
and
people.
Samantha.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. JR had some good comments. He talks about we need less judgment in our world, and it starts with our kids. And we got Amber and Samantha saying hi. Thank you guys for tuning in. What did Amber say right there?
She said the radiance is the soul. In the soul is so much more beautiful than the exterior. Yes, absolutely. Yep. It shines through you, man. Like, I can just see, like, sense somebody with their energy, and, like, you can just totally tell and see through that, and, like, not just their exterior, but their soul shining through. Absolutely.
Love it.
Hi, Sam.
So I think here's the five love languages. This is really specific, and I think this brings into action, so we can simplify this and really bring in the specifics. Words of affirmation, you mentioned that. Quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, physical touch. So obviously some of these things, when you're just talking about doing it yourself, is going to be a little different when you have an intimate partner. But physical touching yourself.
I can hug myself.
We're not
totally.
now. That goes into self-love. So we're not talking about masturbation here. Self-touch, physical touch. That's
Keep your mind out of the gutter. Jeez.
Well, no, I'm talking about self-lust versus self-touch.
Yeah, that's self-lust.
So self-lust would be physical touching yourself. Would be, we all know what that is, and we all probably do that from time to time, and some of us probably try not to. So I'm not gonna get into that, but acts of.
You seem like you want to talk about that.
No, I'm not. I'm not trying to be biased here. There's 5 of them. Let me go through each one. I just wanted to get that. What?
Didn't I share the 5 love languages with you?
Yeah, you've shared this with me.
Yeah.
I probably didn't do them the best.
Yeah.
Um,
We're not getting into
So physical touch, and then acts of service. So that would be like cleaning something up for your partner. But you could apply this
Being
to
them a coffee.
yeah. You could apply this to yourself though. Receiving gifts,
Yeah.
like buying yourself a gift,
It's all about friction-free, removing friction from their life.
and words of affirmation. So that's positive talk.
Friction-free.
Yep.
So those are all things that I think are examples of self-love, and that all the examples that Mariah touched on are, I think, fall into one of those categories. And then if you begin to if I begin to figure out what I like, for example, I'd probably say quality time is probably something that I like.
Quality time is your number one.
Yeah, quality time. Like, I'm not someone who really needs gifts or words of affirmation. I definitely would say quality time and physical touch would
Yeah,
probably
same.
be my two, and I think that's important. Like, and when it's with myself, it's a little different, but I still like quality time with myself. So if I apply it to myself, like, I still like quality time to myself. I think the words of affirmation though is really positive to do that with
Yeah.
ourselves.
Oh yeah.
Because I think the more I do that with myself, the less I need it from someone else. But then if someone else gives me that, then it's kind of me. It's what's the word I'm thinking of? It's I can't even think of it. I'm blanking right now. Then if someone else gives me that words of affirmation, it's justifying or proving my love or my who I am, right? So if like
fulfillment.
yeah, so like for me, like one thing, and this isn't like, any of this can be bad if it's really extreme. If you're doing it again, if you're doing these things to manipulate someone or doing these things to please someone,
Yeah.
then it becomes codependency, like you talked about.
And I think it's really important to be consistent in that too. Like, not just like, but also like, don't buy your gifts all the time.
Yeah, we're not talking about so again. That's why I said
Right.
anything extreme can be bad. Like
Right.
receiving gifts, then that can that's consumerism. If you're
Right.
always buying yourself stuff as your solution,
Right.
it's different if you're treating yourself to go out to eat once in a while on a date by
Yeah.
yourself, or go to a movie by yourself once in a month. Like, that's, to me, that's like treating myself to a gift versus using consumerism, materials, things to fill me up inside. And that's where all this we're talking about is just the audit and the inventory of ourselves to see what we're doing to self-care and self-love. But I think a big part about this too is after we get to this point, we need to give this away.
Absolutely.
We need to give this away. Like we're doing right now and in our individual lives, like, I have to give this away. If I don't, I am not maximizing my value and potential.
I think we need to do it on like the macro level. And so how do we do that on the macro level? Like, like doing stuff like this,
Yep.
advocating,
Advocating
putting
key.
yourself in like community organization.
Yep.
Absolutely. Like, there needs to be, how come self-love isn't taught in schools?
Yeah, it definitely should be. So that definitely bigger macro level, like that, definitely taught to kids in school. I agree.
Yeah.
It's not. These are
No.
things that aren't taught in school, and like my brother touched on, like this, a lot of it falls on parenting that aren't teaching this to their kids either.
Yeah.
Like, if parents and education systems are the two biggest impacts on
Yep.
young adults. I can't say any more than that. Like, parents and then your teachers and coaches, whatever, if you're in sports, like that's all education and parenting are the two systems that I believe have the greatest impact on how kids turn
Yeah.
out. And I think that these things aren't taught in those.
Yeah, we need to like totally break the cycle, because I think we almost have this like intergenerational trauma because of society, like, of this lack of self-love. Like, and so I think the biggest thing is breaking the cycle, staying off the beaten path, and creating a new way of life for all of us. And we have to do that together for sure. So like advocating in your communities, wearing More Love Nation, doing like stuff like that. I mean, totally.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think one thing too, because I think it's easy to get self-love to make it about me always. Again, like I want people that are listening to not thinking that like this is all about me or Mariah or you. Like, we're talking about these things, but the whole purpose of doing this is to heal, actually, so we then can revalue and be of service to others. Like, that is the whole purpose of this, because like I feel like we're doing those other things because we're broken, And because we're broken, we're not healing because we're not doing healthy coping skills to heal. And because we're not healing, we don't feel like we have value to give to others and then actually be of service and help them.
Yeah.
So I think the whole point of this is to heal so then we then can help others. Like that's the whole point of self-love, in my opinion, is to be able to do that and then teach that to others. And I think the more that's taught in schools and with parents, kids can then learn that. But I think it's really important for people to recognize that this is not just about me or Mariah. Like this is about healing and then also be able to help other people heal at the same time. It's like, Dalai Lama, I think, is a good example of someone who talks about love and how love is the answer and how that we need more love in the world and then giving that love away. So I think at the end of the day, for me, it's like a balance of doing all these things and then making sure I'm also taking action to give it away, that I'm not just like doing all this stuff and never doing what you're saying, never getting out my community and never sharing my story on social media and never making art to help the world. Like those are all things that I think we can do to do that.
Oh yeah, we're all capable. We're all capable. And anything like that says that we're not is just a lie, like in my opinion. I think we're more capable than what we know. Totally.
Do you have anything else to add, Mariah? We touched on a lot of good stuff here tonight. I always like to ask, do you got anything you can think of at the moment?
I mean, JR brought the parenting and so I'm not a parent, so I can't really add to that other than I think just pure education and having classes. And when I am a parent is something that I'll bring in mind, just like, hey, talk about self-love and have that conversation with your kiddo, and just be like, hey, mom loves you. Like, do you know what that means? It's like, do you love yourself? And do you also know what that means? And like, how do we practice self-love? So having that open dialogue with your kiddo, I think can be huge, and just, being present in that moment with them and putting the phone away. I mean, the best way we express love, is being present. And like, there's a book that I just bought. I haven't really read it. A friend at the retreat I just went to pulled it out as The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yep, practicing presence, being in the moment.
Personal growth and being present, because at this moment right now, like I am where my feet are, and just staying in this moment right here and now is huge. And so it keeps me out of being that futuristic thinker and thinking in the past, and that's where that mentality comes that I am not enough. So
I agree with you.
I just want to interject.
So I heard somewhere that the ego, just give me a minute here, Rambo. Let Rambo talk. I read somewhere that ego is a dysfunctional relationship with the present moment. So anytime that I'm not in the present moment, I'm in ego, which means I actually can't be in a state of love. So love, in order to be in a state of love, it forces me to be present in the moment. And then the second thing, I think it's important, even though you're not a parent or I'm not a parent, you touched on in the beginning, it's important that we can share about how we were parented as an experience, even though we're not parents yet.
Right.
That experience as a child from that perspective will still bring value and insight to be like, okay, now you're auditing that and you're knowing how you don't want to be a parent because you were experienced that way, and then it allows me to do the same thing and share that experience to hopefully not have to repeat the same behavior, like you said, intergenerational trauma, which a lot of times is just parenting the way they were parented and treating their kids the way they were treated, or living a lifestyle exactly the way their parents were told them to and not changing. I think that's really important to bring up, and that it has extreme value, because then when we become parents, we'll be able to not make those same mistakes. That's how we break the trauma and the pain, and that's where the healing comes, is through that changed behavior. And that's my experience. What were you saying, Rambo?
I made a comment in the comment section.
JR had a comment here under whose name? Under mine and Mariah's.
Sure. Self-confidence. I think what you guys are talking about is more about self-confidence and self-love. And I think when you instill self-confidence in children, it's the most powerful trait one can have. Because for me, it's my most powerful trait, having self-confidence, because then intrinsically, I don't have to go looking for extrinsic factors to bring me confidence, love, or happiness.
So he says, if you have self-confidence, self-love follows. My self-confidence is my most powerful trait because now I intrinsically have it and no longer have to search for confidence, love, or happiness in extrinsic factors. I agree with you, but I also agree to some extent that, you have self-esteem and self-confidence, but that can be ego too. So it's not like that. I don't think that you no longer.
Ego, it's the opposite. Ego is
I don't. Well, let me finish. I'm commenting to someone on here, so now he's screaming when I'm trying
There's
to
no
comment.
one else here.
So-
What?
I don't think necessarily I'm commenting. That's what I'm supposed to do on a podcast is
Yeah.
comment onto the comment. And he's, I agree. I think it's a great point, but I do think that the statement I don't agree with it says you no longer have to search for confidence, love, or happiness in extrinsic factors. I get what he's saying. So I get what he's saying. So I agree with him. You don't have to look outside of yourself to find it. It's an inside job, so to speak. But I think that self-confidence is just another part of self-love. I
Yeah.
think self-love is the ultimate thing, and self-confidence is underneath that. Self-esteem is underneath that. But you can't have those things without self-love. I
Yeah.
can't have self-esteem or self-confidence without self-love. Those are all under the umbrella. Those are actually results of self-love, is confidence,
Yeah.
self-esteem, emotional stability, purpose, energy, passion, loving life, just excited. Those are all results. So my brother is giving you a result of self-love leads
Yep.
to self-confidence, and it's a trait that you no longer need to look outside of yourself for something that's going to make you happy or give you confidence. But that can only be done from looking within
Yep.
and doing an inventory and looking at myself and how am I broken and how I can heal and then how I can take that and change to become a person that can be better. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. I think self-love for me, in my experience, has to come first in order for that self-confidence to grow and not look for extrinsic factors like JR is talking about. And that self-confidence that's, everlasting, that lasts. I think that's self-love is first, and then all the rest of those things follow, those wonderful things. So.
Excellent points. I don't really have anything else to add really to this. Do you have anything else to add?
I mean, the only thing I really have to add is like if women want to reach out to me and talk about it some more, feel free. And kind of so we can just empower one another and not make self-love such a taboo subject today in society. So, yep.
I agree. Thank everyone for listening. JR, Dell, Aaron, Amber, Kristen, Samantha. Who else did we have on the show? Amber. Thank you guys all for listening and tuning in today. This was a great topic. It was awesome to get a woman's perspective on here. I think Mariah made out some awesome insights and perspective as a woman and some really great examples of how she shares her story and what she does to actually implement these things into her life. And I think for me to bring it to the big picture, like all this stuff we're talking about is honesty and awareness and action. And that's part of the growth steps and being able to grow and change and get out of ourselves and to be able to become who we want to be and find happiness and purpose. It requires to be uncomfortable, and it requires us to actually look at ourselves and be honest. And then it requires us to take action to change. It's not easy, but it is simple. And you don't have to do this alone. We talked about this morning, that community is the solution to not having to feel like you're by yourself. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm Isaiah Soul on all my Instagram and Facebook, or Isaac Weirman here on my personal page. And feel free to reach out to Mariah if you need a woman, because I'm just a man. I do have a man.
Just a man.
I'm just the man with the man bun.
You are enough.
I am.
You're not just a man. You are enough.
You
are worthy.
Oh, she blipped like. I tell you what, I step away from self-confidence though, because it'll get to my head. Will it get to my head, Mariah?
Yes.
My ego a little bit.
You got a little pride there.
All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye.